Welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to analyze the last few games that I played on Lichess, rapid games, and hopefully this one will go a little more smoothly than the last few because I won my last few rapid games on Lichess, including mine from last night, which is shown on the board here. In this position, my opponent resigned. I had just taken, I think, their knight here, and so I'm a piece ahead. And they just resigned. But the post-game analysis showed that I only made one mistake and my opponent only made the one blunder, and it was their last move. But before that, I was already ahead a little ways. Where is my mistake? Oh, my mistake was there. So what was this move? Was that an inaccuracy? Okay, there was an inaccuracy here that put me ahead, not a mistake. Here, my opponent played f4. We've run into f4 a bunch in my last few analysis videos where I was supposed to play f4, but I didn't. And I've said repeatedly that one reason I don't ever play f4, or when I'm black, play f5, is because it's always a blunder or mistake. In this case, my opponent played it, and it was an inaccuracy that put me ahead -1. So I'm not sure what they should have played here. I don't know if they should have gone ahead and traded for the knight, if they should have challenged my bishop with this pawn. Maybe they should have gotten this knight out of the way so that, my bishop's not pointed at anything. Let's see what it says here in the Stockfish suggested lines. It says rook f to b1. No, that's not the f rook. It says to move the f rook over to b1. Oh, that seems a little weird, but Stockfish always tells me to do stuff like that too, to lock my other rook over in the corner. I'm assuming the reason you'd want a rook on b1, I don't know why it has to be the f rook, would be because after I take this knight and they take back with the pawn, then your rook would be on this open file. I think I understand that. Or it says just bring this knight back. Okay, but they played this f4 move, which put me ahead. Earlier it said -1.1 here in the list, but now it's thinking more like 0.9. But only if I take the knight now. Okay, well I did. One reason I did is because I wanted to put my knight here in the center. I didn't know if that was great, but I didn't want to put it there when they could immediately trade for it. So that's why I took the knight first and then put this in here, but I don't know if that was the best. I just wanted to check. Knight to e4. Feel pretty good about that. Usually I never know when to put the knights in the middle, but lately Stockfish has been telling me I missed a knight in the middle a lot. One of these 4 squares here always wants a knight on it for some reason, or not always, but a lot of times wants a knight on one of those 4 squares. So anyway, I was happy that I found this. It turns out to be my only move. And again, that was the reason that I traded for the bishop here. I thought, they don't have any more pawns that can challenge this knight, so it's in a good spot. It's controlling multiple squares on the opponent's side of the board, as well as continuing to protect, squares back here on my side, and the only way they're going to get it out of there is to get their knight back somehow. I don't know how, they'd have to make multiple moves in order to trade for that. And in the time that they can do that, I only need one move to get this knight here to replace it. And that knight that they have in front is the only one that can get my knight out of my square. And yes, I am proud of having thought of that during the game. Okay, my mistake was in a couple of more moves. My opponent dropped this back. I guess they thought I was aiming at the bishop. I wasn't really. It says they should have played c4, and I would have played f6. Oh, I didn't even think of f6 while their knight was still there. I actually did think of it a little later, but not here. Or a4. Okay, but this put me a little further ahead. It was their second inaccuracy, but only if I play knight to b6 or knight to d6. Wait, oh, it wants me to bring this knight back here? Wait, why? All right, well, we have reached a point at which I don't understand my best move. I had already mentioned that, I thought about putting this rear knight here on f6 so that it could replace that knight if they ever brought theirs around and, took it that way, which I don't know if my opponent was considering that, but I played this and that's a mistake. It's my only mistake of the game, according to this. Well, I don't understand why it would be a good idea to bring my center knight back. I thought when I put it in there that that's where it was going to stay for a while, but Stockfish wanted me to put it in there so I could put it over here. Knight to d6 or knight to b6, but that one, is it going in there? I don't want to put it in there while their knight's here. Oh, but it says if I played knight to, okay, if I played knight to b6, then Stockfish thinks I would play f6 on my next turn, so they would get that knight out of there. Then I would put this one in here. But no, I wouldn't. It says I wouldn't. I would play a5. Okay. Well, then I don't know why I'm putting this here on b6 if I'm not aiming to come in there. But anyway, I played this. That's a mistake. Now we're almost back to even. And as I said, I hadn't yet thought of f6 at this point. But that's a mistake for multiple reasons. One, my opponent can play bishop to h4, which pins the knight to the queen. Okay, I see why that's a problem. Or c4. That doesn't seem like as big a problem to me because if they take this pawn, I'm just going to replace it, right? Well, I don't understand that. Stockfish thinks I would take it. And they wouldn't, okay, because my knight's currently protected, so they would take the pawn with the queen, and then I would play queen to d5, and they would drop back. Okay, well, they didn't think of that, and if they had, I wouldn't have taken it. I wouldn't have realized that was an engine move. Okay, But moving on, my opponent did see their best move. They saw that as soon as this knight went here that they should pin it, and I thought I needed to get out of the pin while also still protecting the knight. For temporarily, I forgot that the knight is defended, and I could have just moved the queen someplace, like over one or something, but I just brought it up here. I did think they might be, wanting to play c4 here in a little bit, because they do have two pieces protecting that square, their knight and their queen. So I was thinking about that. I wanted my queen to be here where it could guard both of those and the knight. So I did pick my best move. They played a move. Wait, that wasn't counted as inaccurate, but it took us almost a -1. Well, the last time they played a move that took us almost a -1, it was counted as inaccurate, but that was not counted as inaccurate. And of course, I have a problem here now. What do I do? Oh, the engine thinks b5 or just moving the rook over. And this was an inaccuracy for me to drop back and we're even again. I decided to defend it with the queen, but now they can play c4. They didn't think of it. They took the knight and the engine would have taken back with the g-pawn. Wow. Well, now I did realize that my center knight was guarding that spot, so I took with it. And again, they should have played c4. Okay, so that's a move that my opponent missed multiple times in this game. I'm not sure that I would have found it either. They dropped that knight back, and I should have played rook to e7. I'm not sure why. I guess to be able to guard the b-pawn in case I move my queen. Oh no, it changed while I was talking. Sorry, a6 or b5. I don't know why those were best, but I just put this knight back in the middle because, again, I thought that was a good spot for it. But I think that was my last inaccuracy of this game. My opponent finally did play c4, and it was still their best move when they played it. And my best move is b6. Oh, it changed its mind. Now it thinks I should take. Oh, because the knight's defended. I wasn't sure about that. I honestly thought they were thinking of pushing it even further, which is why I played b6. Also, this defends the b-pawn in case I need to move my queen, but that was one of my two best moves, so I feel okay. Their absolute best move was to bring their f-rook over here and point at my queen in case these two pawns, exchanged places. I should have gone all the way over or just dropped back, but I went forward, which wasn't quite as good because if they can play forward, they'll take, and I'll have to move my queen again, I guess. Oh no, I could have just taken with the knight. It says I wouldn't. It says then I would put my queen on e7. I don't know why I wouldn't have taken with the knight. But my opponent wasn't interested in pushing down. They took the pawn, which is probably the idea of c4 earlier, but now they were supposed to keep pushing. Taking back with the pawn seemed a little better than taking back with the queen. Also, I wanted, to defend the knight because I didn't know how long the rook would be able to stay here. They're supposed to move this rook up one. Or this rook up one. Not sure why. Putting this knight in here wasn't that great for them, and I need to put a rook on the c-file. Either rook. It looks like the engine doesn't really care which one goes over there. Well, I figured this one out on my own. I very often don't know which rook to move to which file, but this time it didn't matter which rook, and I guessed the c-file. My idea was that if they took, I would take back, and then I would have control of the file because they couldn't move the other rook over then, and I would have a really good spot to put that rook here in just a second. That's what I was thinking when I played this rook over here. They're supposed to play h3 to give themselves a way out of a coming mate, apparently, and they did. Good job to my opponent for finding that. And hilariously enough, this is the move in this game that I'm the most proud of. I played f6 here. I know I should have played it earlier to boost this knight out of the way, but I found it now, and it was one of my two best moves. Played it. I have to bring that knight back to f3 or g4. Looks like I'll just be very slightly ahead. But they decided to take their rook first, which wasn't a good idea. Puts me over -1 for the first time in this analysis. Of course, I have to take back, and as we said, they can't safely contest this file because that square's not defended on their end. Now, they definitely need to move this knight back. No, it's saying queen to a6. Where's, down there. Oh, they can contest the file. Queen to a6, but then I would just drop down to c7, and then they would put their knight where the queen had been. Oh, okay. I guess I get that. That turns out to be their best move, but knight to f3 is very close. My opponent went the wrong way. I think their idea was that if I took with the pawn, they would get the knight because my rook's not defending the knight anymore, but they didn't realize that my rook is also looking at that square. It's not even my only move that stays ahead. I could have just played queen to e6 and I still would have been ahead and they would have tried to save the knight, but I would have gone here to c3. They would have had to move the queen and then I would have brought my knight there, which is a check. No, not a check, but it's an attack on the queen. That line there seems a little extra complicated to me. It's much more simple to just take the rook. So for once, the engine and I agreed. And as I said at the beginning, they resigned. So that was a pretty tight and close game. And I was pretty proud of some of the moves that I played in there, especially f6, especially choosing the rook on the open file, contesting the c file. Oh, and the first time I played knight to e4, even though I found out later that that's not why I was supposed to put it there. I was supposed to put it there to get it out again. Still not sure about that. But anyway, happy for this game. The night before that game ended right here where my opponent resigned on move 16. Now I'm just up one pawn. And at the time, I remember being a little confused as to why they resigned. It took me a while to find that, oh, it's my turn, and I can just take this bishop for free. It's a check, and I'll get the bishop, and then the exchange, knight for the rook. Again, I only had one mistake, and it was after I was ahead. My opponent had 2 blunders, so both of us played perfectly, with no inaccuracies, no mistakes, no blunders through 13 moves. I'm pretty happy with that. This is an improvement over 2 years ago where me and my opponents would often have multiple mistakes and inaccuracies in the first 10 moves. So anytime now that I clear 10 moves with neither of us having made any, not even an inaccuracy, I'm pretty proud of that. My rating hasn't gone up since then, but you'd think it should have. Now here I'm just going to take a look and see what my opponent should have played. I obviously was going for this fork here. My opponent should have brought this bishop back to E1 to guard that square. And then I would have just taken control of the C file. Or they could have brought their H-rook over to defend that. And then it says I would have played knight to B4, that's B4. And then they would have still brought the bishop back. Okay. But they played knight to C3. I don't know if they thought that, I would take the knight. I'm not sure what that move was about. But I did take the F-pawn. The engine thinks my opponent should play H4 here or move the D-rook over. I'm not sure why the D-rook, but that's the one that my opponent chose. And I should have taken that rook there. But I didn't, and that was a problem. I'm not sure why I didn't. I'm trying to think now. Why did I not take that? I did play knight to E4 here, but this time it wasn't good. It was my only mistake of the game. Not nearly as good as the previous game when I played knight to E4. But here I think, I'm trying to think back to 2 nights ago. I guess what I was thinking is if they took, well, if they didn't take, I'm aiming at their bishop. But if they did take, I would take with the pawn, which would be aimed at that knight, and then they would have to move that knight somewhere. I thought I would be doing okay. Also, I thought maybe I could come this way where my knight's defending that. We could trade off the bishops and I would have a knight here and then bring the rook to the open file. I think that's what I thought, but that's pretty complicated, so maybe not. So this is a mistake, but I'm still ahead. My opponent needs to get this rook over here to C1. And it says even if they didn't, they would eventually put it on C1. But they definitely shouldn't have played knight to E5. Again, like my opponent did in the last game, which was good for them in the last game, and this was good for me in the last game. But in this game, neither one of those were good moves. Of course, in this case, I get to take the bishop. My opponent immediately realized that and resigned. Oh, when we first looked at that, it said -7, but now it says -5.8. But yeah, I'm just going to take the bishop, which is a fork. They're going to move, and then I'll take this rook. Okay, well, that one worked out for me as well. And I do understand the mistake that I made, which was playing here. I don't know why. In hindsight, I cannot figure out why I wouldn't take this rook. I don't know what my train of thought was. I know I went through a little rigmarole earlier, but that seems very obvious now. I wouldn't classify this as an elementary mistake because it's not a free piece. I was making a choice between this exchange versus, controlling this area here. But yeah, obviously taking the rook's the best move. But not doing it, I'm still ahead. I think one of the reasons I'm still ahead here to -2, despite only being up one pawn, is that my opponent has 3 isolated pawn islands, whereas I only have 2. I'm only missing one pawn, and that's the C pawn. These 2 pawns over here are the same as their queenside pawns, but all my other pawns are together, and I think maybe that has something to do with it. Plus, I have a more advanced piece controlling things on their side of the board, maybe. But anyway, let's look at the night before that. Another game that I also won. In this game, my opponent resigned on move 18 after I put my bishop here, which is pointed at their king and at their queen and is defended by my knight. So I was pretty proud of finding that. Not sure what their queen was doing way down in there anyway. Looks like we both had some blunders here near the end. It says I did have a mistake and a blunder, but I was ahead pretty much the whole way. And my opponent had 2 blunders, which were both near the end. So let's go back to right here. I'm already up +2. My opponent having only made 2 inaccuracies to put me up +2. This is inaccurate because I can easily move my queen and continue defending this knight. It looks like I can go to D3 or C2. Oh, it didn't say D2. D3 or C2. Okay, well that makes sense. But I didn't do that for some reason. Why didn't I do that? I instead developed this bishop, and I'm not sure why. I can still move my queen to defend the knight, but it would have been easier to move it here. I, again, don't know about D2, but the computer lists D3 and C2, maybe because they're both lined up with this bishop going down there. Oh, that makes sense. Well, I understand that now. But yeah, why did I play this? Oh, I think because their queen was staring down the F file here, and I wanted to be able to, to challenge it with my queen protected by the rook. Although my king would have been protecting it here, but then they would have won the knight. So yeah, I should have protected the knight first Maybe up here to d3, and then I could have developed that bishop, or pushed this pawn. Okay, well that makes sense. Also, I can see c2 because that pawn is one of the things that's not defended. I understand this mistake, I'm pretty sure. That allows my opponent to put a rook on this semi-open file, kind of pointed down here at this undefended piece, which I would then have to move. But they didn't do that. They played queen to f7, and I think the idea there was that they wanted to double. Oh, and I had the bishop to d5 now, but wait, no, they would have just blocked with the bishop. And it says I would have taken it, and they would have taken it, and then I would have played d5. Oh, I would have had a fork. Oh, okay. I understand that one too. Then this one's a little on the advanced end of intermediate, but I do understand. Checking now, their only way to not lose the queen for a bishop is to put their bishop here. I would take it. It would only make sense for them to take back, and then I push this pawn. Okay, and they would move the queen at that point. I would get the knight for the pawn. Got it. But instead I went here, losing almost all my advantage. I think I was distracted by the fact they had just moved up. I thought they were about to double up here, and I thought they won't have a chance to double up if I get here. Because now if they put the rook there, I'm going to take their queen. They're going to have to take my queen. Then I can pull this rook over here. Oh, but then they would get the knight. Oh, well, I shouldn't have done that then. Right now they should take this free pawn, which I for some reason forgot to defend, and they did. So good for them. It's about +1, but only if I play knight to f4. What does that do? Oh, it gets my knight out of this pin and threatens their queen. Well, I didn't see that. I saw the second best move, which does the same thing, knight to c3. I'm not sure why it's the second best. And they're supposed to trade off for my queen now, because we're even on material. If they do anything else, it's a problem. Even their second best move is a mistake. They didn't want to trade queens, which I've mentioned a lot. At my level, a lot of people don't want to trade queens. Now, I clearly don't know a ton about chess. You've watched enough of these videos to know that I make tons of mistakes, but I seem to do okay after a queen trade. A lot of times I've even been behind, and if I can force them into a queen trade, so many of my opponents don't play as well with their other pieces. Now, some of them do, and then after I force the queen trade, I end up losing, but a lot of them don't. This opponent should have traded queens here, but instead they ran away, which gives me that. The move that I found. I'm so proud of myself for finding it, but I also could have played h3 here and I would have been okay. So I found some good moves in all three of these games. I'm proud of myself for that. And I understood the mistakes that I made and why I shouldn't have played them. Obviously, the good moves that I found were helped by my opponent messing up, but it still requires me to find them. In this case, I would call this an intermediate level blunder when they played there. That was one reason they needed to trade queens. And if they were going to run away, they definitely shouldn't have run away there. I don't know where would have been safe for them to run away. Here, it does say any move except trading queens would have been a mistake. Like, for example, if they had just dropped all the way back, I probably would have taken their queen. Oh no, it says I still would have checked. And when they got out, then I would have taken their queen. That would have given them doubled pawns over here on the A file. Oh, and then I would have taken the knight because it would have been undefended. Very nice. Well, then why wouldn't I take the queen first? Oh, I could. Okay. Yeah, I would just take the queen here and then I would have a free knight. And I'm up +4. I mean, they have a free pawn here too, and that's their best move, but then I would just, put my bishop down here and everything's okay. But that was worse. So anyway, it does feel nice for once to make a video where all the games I analyzed were games that I won. And I'm pretty sure I understood all my mistakes. Thank you for spending your time here. I'll see you next time.